Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Robin's Nest. Sad news today. The legend, Alan Moffat, passed away at 83. 83. I say bad news and sad news, but 83. That's a pretty good number, you know. I try not to, when it comes to, if you hit 80 and so on and so forth, try not to make it too sad of a deal, because a lot of people, my dad made it to 54, 55, a lot of people aren't lucky enough to make it 80 years, much less, anything past that. So, I hate it for his family. I know it's going to be a sad deal for them, but, like I said, look at what he accomplished. He won the Bathurst 1000, 4 or 5 times? And, that's a big freaking deal, man. So he accomplished a lot in those 80 plus years. So thinking about his family for sure. We need to talk NASCAR today. Some stuff regarding Steve Phelps and some of his communications came out, and so I want to dive into that. But before we do, if you enjoy listening to me ramble about motorsports, cars, anything else I feel like talking about, make sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment, turn on notifications. The works. If you're interested in diecast cars, t-shirts, hats, auto parts, anything like that, check out our eBay. The link is in the description. Also follow me on Facebook and X for more motorsports content. Post all day, daily on both of those. The links are in the description as well. Without further ado, let's get into the rest of the video. So part of the ongoing litigation between 2311 and Front Row and NASCAR has been a lot of discovery. That's like a portion of the pre-trial. And what that means is a lot of private communications behind the scenes with NASCAR, behind the scenes with 2311 has been made public. And so another batch of emails were made public. I believe this was yesterday. And Steve Phelps, who's now the commissioner of NASCAR, said that Richard Childress is a dumb redneck. Someone should take him out back and flog him. And made a lot of other insulting comments about the fact that Richard wouldn't be anywhere without NASCAR. The money that he's worth is because of NASCAR largely. And so on and so forth. And while that may be correct, and that is an accurate statement, the part about the money, I love that Steve conveniently leaves out the amount of money that NASCAR made and continues to make off of Richard Childress and Dale Earnhardt. So for those who are unaware, which anyone who knows anything about racing knows this, Dale Earnhardt drove for Richard. Okay, and Dale Earnhardt was the face of the sport for a long, long time. And majority of all this success and everything that he did in the sport was with Richard. And, the number 3, the black number 3, that's Richard's car. NASCAR's still making money off of that to this day. Don't let them fool you. Okay, so yes, Richard may have made a lot of money from NASCAR, but it's a two-way street. It hasn't been just one-sided. And it was just an insult. But it just shows that Steve Phelps is a moron. And the more stuff that comes out, the more back channel communications that we see and we hear, it's just further evidence that this current leadership team, they don't give a crap about the sport, the series. They don't. They care about the bottom line, period. They don't care about anything that goes into NASCAR aside from the bottom line. That's it. And that's it's been evident before any of this stuff was released, but now that it's been released, you can't argue it. You can't argue against it. That's all they care about. And the thing, what blows my mind is they changed Steve's job title to commissioner, several months ago, and made Steve O'Donnell the president. And you'd have to think that they did that with the idea that perhaps some sketchy stuff was going to come out that Steve had said behind the scenes, And, do you want the commissioner of NASCAR, which no one even knows what that means, to be the one who said these things, or do you want the president, the actual sitting president of NASCAR, to have said these things? And so obviously it's damage control. Why they don't just get rid of him, I don't understand. In my personal opinion, he should be fired, especially after this stuff came out. He should be fired immediately. Because now you also have to look back at anything that's been done on the racetrack or off the racetrack as far as penalties and stuff like that goes against Richard Childress Racing. Now you have to look at it as, well, were they actually penalized based on merits, or were they penalized because the NASCAR brass has an issue with Richard, a personal issue? Case in point was last year when Austin Dillon won Richmond, wrecked a couple of guys to do it, but won Richmond. And NASCAR came in and said, well, you're not in the playoffs. Sorry, try again next year. We don't like the way that you raced at the end of that event. We don't like the fact that you hooked, I think it was Denny or somebody, turned him into the wall after you'd already wrecked a Logano. Despite the fact that they advertised the playoffs to be a format that fosters that kind of driving. Yet when it happens, we're going to penalize the guy for doing exactly what we wanted him to do in the first place. It never made any sense to me, in the slightest. In the slightest. Every penalty for hooking someone in the right rear and turning him into the wall has been suspension. He didn't get that. He just got kicked out of the playoffs. Never made any sense. And it cost Richard a lot of money. A lot of money. And now you got to look at it as, what was the actual reason? And it shouldn't be that way, but now NASCAR just continues to shoot their credibility straight to hell. I mean, at this point, I don't know how you could sit back and say that they have any. They're biased. They only care about money. We don't even know really who's running the show, because Jim hasn't done jack since he's shown up, other than implement one of the worst race cars that any series on this planet has ever seen. Outside of that, what has he done? So is Lisa actually calling the shots? Because some of the other emails that we've seen, it certainly sounds like it. Jim's not really mentioned, but Lisa's mentioned a lot. She's the one who the Steves are communicating with. So who's actually running the ship? Who's steering the ship? And it's not a good situation. Now, I say based on this, I was talking to somebody about it earlier, based on what we saw, or what we read yesterday, what we saw, if you want there to be any fundamental change, any longevity to stock car racing in the United States, you better hope and pray that these teams beat NASCAR in this lawsuit. And I think there's a very good possibility that they will. Almost exclusively, everything that's come out since this stuff started that's been negative has been on NASCAR side. And, the way that they operate their business or whatever, I mean, they are a monopoly. There's no question about that. So the only thing that remains to be seen is, can you convince a jury of that? And I think they have a really good grounds to do that. And I say this as someone I've never been a huge Richard Childress fan. I've never been a huge 2311 Denny Hamlin, Joe Gibbs, or well, I do like Front Row. I'm not like a diehard, but I do like Front Row. But it's just one of those deals, man. And as far as Steve is concerned, I would like to know, now that this has been made public, what it's going to be like for him to walk around the paddock area. If he even does. Who knows if he does. But how's he going to show his face back? You know good and well that a lot of people are going to take a lot of offense. Quite a bit of offense. People are going to take offense to what he said. Because Richard, whether you like him or not, he has a ton of respect in the garage area. And for a guy to have said some pretty derogatory things about him that's now been made public, I don't know how you show your face. Like I said, the guy should just be fired. Just outright. Right now, immediately NASCAR should cut him loose. Period. Because you got to look at some of the other things that he's done since he's taken over. The whole Bubba Wallace thing, however you feel about it, and I don't want to get into it, I don't want to open that can of worms, but Steve orchestrated that whole thing. Okay? Yes, Bubba ran with it after it was started, but Steve orchestrated the whole thing. All of the social issues and political issues that have been brought into the sport over the past few years has been Steve Phelps. Now, Steve O'Donnell is not opposed to any of the stuff either. He's made that clear. But Steve Phelps has been the one that's been pushing all that nonsense. You know, NASCAR over the past few years, and it's a widely accepted thing that they have went so far to the left. And every time you bring this up, people are like, well, they had Donald Trump at the racetrack for what, last year? I think it was for Daytona 500 or this year or whatever. Yeah, because Donald Trump brings eyeballs wherever he goes, which translates into money. Yeah, they don't like Donald Trump. You could tell by the body language when they all went to the White House with Penske to celebrate their championship. They do not like Donald Trump. They are so far to the left, it's unreal. But they're businessmen, so they're going to do whatever they need to do to make money. You can't sit back and look at what Steve has done since he's come in and say that it's anything other than what we've seen on a national stage and a global stage over the past few years, especially since COVID, which has just been, lunacy. And Steve has been pushing that into NASCAR. Sports need to be devoid of politics and social issues. Let's just be clear about that. People don't want to watch football, basketball, NASCAR, or anything else and get someone's political agenda shoved down their throat. I know I certainly don't. I don't care if it's on the left or right. I don't want to see that crap. That's not what sports are for. If I want to see that, I'll go watch the news. Sports is supposed to be an escape from that kind of crap and from the everyday stuff. And then when you start shoving it down everybody's throats, you start splitting your fan base because now you're assuming that, most of our fan base is to the left, which I don't know why you'd even think that about NASCAR. Like whether they want to admit it or not, it is a regional. Most of the fans are still in the Southeast. That's the big chunk of the fan base. It's always been that way, and unless something crazy happens, it's always going to be that way. Whether they like it or not. It's just a fact. But according to Steve, he would say that we're all dumb rednecks. No, we're not, actually. Like, y'all have proceeded to run the series into the ground to the point where it has, like, the worst viewership that it's had in my lifetime. The championship finale this year was dismal as far as ratings are concerned. The race itself was clearly... There were elements of it that were clearly orchestrated by the sanctioning body. It wasn't just the race teams that had a hand in that. I got to thinking about it. My wife and I were talking. I don't know why it didn't dawn on me when it happened, but the championship race, all that crap that happened at the end of the race where they threw caution for Byron hitting the wall, yet he kept going. No debris. There was no debris whatsoever that came off that car. And then, lo and behold, Kyle Larson ends up winning the championship. Now, it was a twofold. It was a twofold win for NASCAR. Denny Hamlin was getting ready to win the championship, and he's in the process of suing them. So they didn't want him to win for that reason and that reason alone. But Kyle was going to be the rightful champion, the champion had they had a full season championship. So for them, they can sit back and say, well, see, it's a legitimate championship format. The rightful champion won. As they're in the middle of a full onslaught from the fans regarding this format. All the fans want it changed. Most of the fans do. NASCAR doesn't want that to happen. They want to keep playoff format. Why? I have no idea. No idea. But see, they've been paid. They got that TV money, so they don't care. They don't care. And it's a sad situation to be in. But the bottom line is, Steve Phelps, time to go. Time to kick him out. And, God, NASCAR's just got to get better management in general. and the ownership structure needs to change. This being a family-run business nonsense, at this point, it's doing more harm than it's doing good. I think that's pretty obvious. I think everyone can agree on that. So, time for a change. If you enjoy listening to me ramble, make sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment, turn on notifications to works. If you're interested in diecast cars, t-shirts, hats, auto parts, anything like that, check out our eBay. The link is in the description. Follow me on Facebook and X for more motorsports content. Those links are also in the description. As always, thank you guys and gals for watching. Until next time, we'll see you. Peace.